Thrasher magazine is one of the most respected brands in skateboarding. They helped introduce Bay Area skate culture to the world, and since the early 1980s, their headquarters has been in San Francisco's Hunters Point neighborhood. Growing up in San Francisco, I always appreciated that the city was a skate mecca. So I was juiced when Maddie from Thrasher's music department hit me up and invited me to check out their office and learn more about the company. I got the chance to sit down with Tony and talk about how Thrasher has stayed in the game for over 40 years and why its roots in San Francisco are such an important part of the magazine's story.
It's funny because a lot of people have no idea that we're here. I mean, a lot of people know Thrasher is a San Francisco company, but they definitely don't know that we're like out here. The print product is still like the anchor of everything, you know? Everything is based on that still. It's still like, holy shit, that person made the cover of Thrasher. 41 years now making a magazine. We only missed one in like the 80s. My dad just said that they were all fucked up and missed the deadline, and that was the one. They missed 1 month, and and that's the only month we've ever missed in like 41 years. For us, being able to use the digital side allowed it to become more of like a worldwide thing. You know, the print is the foundation, but the digital allowed Thrasher to be something that everybody's kind of like experiencing in real time all around the world.
Right town.
Skateboarding is one of those things that's like, typically it's like 12 to like 18. It's all encompassing, you know, like kids I don't think anything else. And I always used to joke, like somebody either gets a driver's license or gets laid and then they quit skating. But people have like, you know, varying levels of like connection to it still. Like, skateboarding's super young. Yeah. You know, it's like you think about it and you're like, oh, it's been around like 50 years or something. Yeah. Like that's nothing.
And there's also that intersection of like hip hop and graffiti writing culture around the same age. Yeah. And just like those cultures, skating is something that it could have just been a fad. Like, remember those kids were doing that back in the 80s and in Southern California, they were skating on the pools and whatever happened to that? And it shows that there's like a lot of power in something like that to keep going past this point and still attract new people.
If skateboarding had just been skateboarding, like just the act and hadn't become this kind of like cultural phenomenon, it would have died out. The story's also like, you know, beyond Thrasher, like it's a San Francisco and Bay Area thing. You know, when skateboarding did die out, and then, you know, kind of street skating was just kind of evolving and beginning. Really, it was like everything that mattered happened in San Francisco at Embarcadero. Yeah. And at that same time, you had like these guys that, like Mike Carroll, who were the people that really, really mattered. They were skating to like Adele song, or they were skating to, you know, and that was like in the videos, like, you know, Plan B, Questionable, or Virtual Reality, that were the videos that changed skateboarding and street skating forever. So there was this intersection, not just of hip hop, but it was like music from this same area, you know, that was the soundtrack for these videos. With San Francisco especially, it was like, you know, the demographics of skating just started to change. In the 90s and with street skating, it turned into like a in the streets kind of thing, and all of a sudden you had kids from neighborhoods that, you know, weren't necessarily, you know, exposed to skateboarding, all of a sudden seeing skateboarding and being the people that like were in charge of like taking skateboarding to the next level. I mean, you had a kid like LeVar McBride, who was like a skateboarding savant that grew up in SF, and you know, he might not have been a vert skater in the 80s, but he was a street skater in the 90s. It became, you know, more accessible to everyone. It started in the streets. And San Francisco was where all this shit was happening. Anything that mattered was at Embarcadero. Yeah. It was like ground zero for all of it. And then, you know, when Embarcadero went away, it turned into Pier 7. Yeah. People would come from all over to be a professional skateboarder here in San Francisco. Like, I gotta go to SF to do it. Every ledge that goes downstairs in skateboarding is called a Hubba ledge. Everyone just like, oh, it's a Hubba ledge.
Right.
It's like, because there was a place in San Francisco called Hubba Hideout, and it's based on crack rocks.
Right.
And it's like based on Bay Area slang for crack.
That's a trip. I mean, that's kind of one reason I'm doing the work and the content that I'm doing, to kind of like shed some light on all this stuff that we kind of know instinctively, but other people, they might deal with this term or this style or in their everyday life and have no idea the actual origins of it. That's the trip about going back and looking at all this stuff, is like, you know, I didn't get all this from documentaries or like the PBS or like, this is just what I grew up around.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we're about to go skate the pier, and afterwards we're gonna go do some graffiti, and afterwards there's a free show at Golden Gate Park, and then we're gonna go to a house party in the Mission.
Yeah.
And then you look back, you know, a few decades later, and all those were like these huge, culturally significant, unique things that you can't get anywhere else. But I just was lucky enough to have this in my backyard.
Yeah, San Francisco geographically and just like the surrounding area is super small. Everybody's real close and like connected in a way that you don't see at other places in the same way. You had all these different kids coming together that from all these different backgrounds, but they were all kind of in the same zone. Jake Phelps was our editor for forever. He passed away in 2019. He was also a San Francisco native. He was an SF historian like you couldn't imagine. He knew everything that you needed to do wherever you might find yourself in the city. He lived and breathed San Francisco. There was always like this tension between Northern California and Southern California, and Jake like made sure that people knew that when Thrasher showed up, this was the people from San Francisco. If you're telling the Thrasher story, he's like the kind of central figure. You know, there was an attitude that came with Thrasher in the beginning, and it was like it's not just skateboarding, it's bigger than that. But Jake really kind of like took, you know, the kind of attitude and the edge to the next level. He made it tougher. He also like just took it over from a group of dudes that were like, you know, getting a little bit older. Happened at the right time. I mean, he worked in the warehouse here, which at the time was just the downstairs. So he was kind of like, you know, packing boxes, t-shirts, mags, whatever. He was always just telling the dudes upstairs, which is like, you know, where we're at now, like the guys putting the magazine together, the editorial team, like everything that he thought sucked. And he was not afraid to tell you what he thought sucked. And he just kept saying it until eventually they were like, basically like, if you think you can do a better job, here you go. And he did that all the way up until 2019 when he passed. We haven't touched the walls really, so we took out like his desk and this guy Luke, who was the photo editor's desk. Because before it was just like untouched, and we were like, well, it's better that we like actually use the space and you kind of keep the memories alive as opposed to just like, oh, we don't touch anything. And the walls are the same. We just threw some couches and candlestick seats in here, and we make the magazine on a month-to-month basis, and we've got ideas of what is going to go into the magazine that month. But depending on like, you know, what's actually happening in the streets, it could end up being something completely different on the cover or in the magazine altogether. We're really reacting in real time to like what's just going on, wherever it might be. It's continuing to show just the best of skateboarding, and also like showing people that it isn't maybe what you see on TV, and it's showing the other side of it.
You guys are more counterculture.
Yeah, I never want skateboarding to be like kind of put in a box, you know, and to be easily understood, because it's not easy. It still to this day doesn't make any sense to me. But that's what's that's what's so beautiful about it in a way. There's something like inherently like you said, counterculture or like rebellious there. And I think that even people that might not skate, they recognize like that idea. And Thrasher is like kind of right there in the cross section of that idea. It's just like, it's an attitude, there's a level of rebellion, and people see that and they, kind of gravitate towards that. I think skateboarding it brought a lot of people in from, some crazy backgrounds and some difficult circumstances. And it gave them this like, kind of like fuck you outlet in a way, but it's kind of like a healthy outlet at the same time.
There's something healthy about not following the rules.
Yeah.
Or just resisting that type of control.
Yeah.
Say you can't write on walls. Well, that's a natural instinct to like write on walls. You can't use this concrete is more valuable than, your existence basically.
Yeah.
So don't mess it up by skating on it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of something natural and healthy about rebelling against that. And once you kind of sanitize that, it loses the edge.
You can't really organize this. In the same way that I say like every week is chaos. It's like you can only organize skateboarding so much.